Unfortunately for you, it is Dogged JM here today to cover the powerful and underrated Lothric Knightsword. This thing is a real underrated gem. Whole lot of people actually never even see this weapon in PvP, but it has some really interesting and unique qualities that, you know, without knowing these qualities, you're never going to be able to be successful with this weapon. It's honestly, it's a difficult weapon to use, but there are some really great qualities about it which make it, you know, better than you would think. Here's quality number one. Quality number one is that the Lothric Knightsword has a 110 critical modifier, which, combined with its quite high AR, makes it probably the best critical tool in its class. There will obviously be better weapons for taking crits with, daggers, big weapons, but at the end of the day, you know, if you hit someone with a Lothric Knightsword crit, it's gonna hurt because of that 110 critical modifier. What's another thing that makes the Lothric Knightsword so good that most people don't even realize? The thing that makes the Lothric Knightsword so good, but underrated, remember, no one rates this thing highly, is that its one-handed moveset is better than its two-handed moveset. It's faster, you don't lose too much damage because its best infusions are typically elemental or sharp, and then, you know, it's just a really good weapon that you can use one-handed, which, because you're using it one-handed, this unlocks the ability for you to use some interesting offhands, like the underrated Black Knight Shield, or the underrated and powerful Cestus, or the underrated and powerful Iron Round Shield. All of these are great underrated and powerful options. However, today I'm going to choose to ignore all of those in favor of some more, even more underrated. I know, it might be hard to get more underrated than the Black Knight Shield, but you know what? We're gonna try today. Folks. So today I have paired our underrated and powerful Dark Lothric Knightsword with a underrated and powerful Estoc. Ever since this thing got nerfed in 2017 or 2016 or whatever it was, it just really has been slept on. No one uses it anymore. It's pretty underrated and pretty powerful still, though. So what's so great about the Estoc and the Offhand? First of all, according to one person in Discord, who I don't know if he's actually correct or not, but you know what, we're gonna roll with it. It gets actually, the Estoc and the Offhand gets better recovery than it does in the main hand. It has fewer recovery frames. This is actual hard data now we're getting into. And second of all, the Estoc poke, despite having slightly lower range than the Lothric Knightsword, is faster than the Lothric Knightsword, and combos into a Lothric Knightsword R2, or actually just a straight sword R2 in general. Well, maybe not the broadsword, but whatever, you get my point. And this is essentially a faster whiff punish, which will net you more damage than a straight sword R1, which is why a lot of duelists tend to use the Estoc and Lothric Knightsword together. It's a bigger whiff punish for admittedly a higher stamina cost and a longer total animation between the L2 of the Estoc and the R2 of the Lothric Knightsword, but the punish is greater, which means that technically you are getting more damage for a easier whiff punish. This next fight is actually against one of my subscribers. It's basically, it is a duel, essentially. My subscriber left a comment on one of my videos saying, "Hey man, GG's, you probably don't remember me, I was Satellites, also you have a great hair and a sexy voice." He didn't actually say either of those last two things, but anyway. And I was like, "Ha, bruh, you think I don't remember you? You think I don't remember you?" Yeah, you're right, I didn't remember him at all. But I did save the footage, that's what counts. Anyway, so, yeah, we're gonna have a little duel with Satellites here. He's using the Pontiff Knight Curved Sword. A lot of people hate fighting the Pontiff Knight Curved Sword. I kind of like it. It's undoubtedly not an easy weapon to fight, but given that I'm a sweaty, filthy tryhard, I figure, you know, I embrace the challenge and, like, figure, I don't know, I need to get better at fighting this thing. I think last time I went curved sword mirrors with beat-ups, I won about 1 in 50, so, you know, I should probably get better with this thing and at fighting this thing. Anyway, so just trying to take my try-hard duelist setup and fight his Triad Duelist setup. He survives the Kirk roll because he's got some level of regen, probably a Blessed Cestus, but we trade for the end of the fight. Anyway, GG's, man. Good fight. And as you can all see, this is a pretty good dueling setup. It's not going to guarantee that you're going to beat every single Pontificate Curved Sword user that you're going to meet, but, you know, it'll get you a long way. Alright, we've talked about some of the strengths of the setup. Let's talk about one of the big weaknesses of the setup. And you might be asking me, well, what sort of weaknesses could it have? It's, you know, essentially a really fast whiff punish, which combos into more than straight sword R1 damage. And the answer is, it is weak to lag. Oh my god, look at that, man. But like, seriously, I mean, I'm kind of joking because like everything is weak to lag, but this entire setup is basically predicated on the idea of interrupting and whiff punishing your opponent, and if they're too latent to do that, then it is probably going to struggle to some degree. They will also struggle to hit you undoubtedly, but at the same time, I don't know what the fuck that guy was doing, but anyway, whatever, he's dead now. I'm the greatest. Holy shit, look at this! Look at this nonsense! Like, this clip is... it has no real purpose. It was literally just a setup for me to say that the setup is weak to lag. We're gonna check out some actual latency monsters later, but holy... what the fuck? Dude. Please. Ethernet cable. Require Ethernet cables 2019. Jesus, what year is it? This next clip gives a couple great examples of what happens when you try and fight a slightly latent opponent using a setup that is very difficult to interrupt on even the tiniest amount of latency, with a setup that is entirely predicated around interrupting your opponent, like Straight Sword and Estoc is. Straight Sword and Halberd is quite similar, if we're honest. I experimented with it for a while and eventually ended up dumping it because Halberd is just not as good at whiff punishing as Estoc is because it is significantly slower. But anyway, ignore my terrible attempt at a cheeky swap. It was a bad idea. Should not have done it. But anyway, we are back. This man is about to start pressing R1 like a machine gun with a not really poised up, but he has a little bit of poise. Two-handed Hollow Slayer, which the hyper armor on that thing starts up so quickly that any sort of latency just makes it really hard to gauge when the space between the hyper armor frames is, which makes it borderline impossible to interrupt. Like you see there, I swung and I hit him before he had even started swinging on my screen. But you know, because we have latency, it's a big issue and I just can't interrupt him. I have no idea when his hyper armor frames start or end. This guy clearly saw Scott Junn's video where he literally presses R1 8 times in a row with his forehead on Hollow Slayer and wins a duel. He decided, hey, that looks like an easy way to win PvP. So there he goes. He's going to go mash R1. Anyway, a minute ago I did R1. I did 6 R1s in a row with a straight sword. And he got hit by 4 of them. And then he rolled out on the 5th. A lot of decent players will get hit by R1, R2, but against good ones you want to go 4 R1s and then 1 R2 because they will panic roll what they think is going to be a 5th R1 and then get hit by the R2. So the interesting thing about this setup is that in a duel you almost always want to lead with the Estoc. But in an invasion, when you're fighting multiple people, a lot of the time I found myself relying largely on the straight sword, and then whenever I got to, you know, 1v1 duel the host, that was basically the only point at which I would actually start using the Estoc. Estoc is obviously really fast, has excellent range at 17 SP, maybe more in the offhand, I'm not clear on that, but anyway. But the fact is, since it has no horizontal coverage, the fact that it is a whiff punish beast and roll punish beast with the only weakness in terms of roll catching being the fact that it has really low poise damage, despite all of these great qualities it has, against multiple opponents, its lack of horizontal coverage was really damaging. Like, if you check out this invasion here, I legitimately do not think I've thrown out a single L2 so far. I've thrown out a bunch of R1s with straight sword. Just spamming R1. There we go, 3 in a row. But have not used the Estoc barely at all, because it just has very little capability of dealing with multiple opponents. Straight sword is just a better Estoc in that regard. But regardless, in that ways, it arguably makes it an even more dynamic setup, because you've got a really good setup for in the middle of an invasion, if you ever have a brief moment to 1v1 a phantom, and in the cleanup of an invasion when you're chasing down the host, you've got a really good dueling 1v1 setup. I would argue it's a better setup than just, a straight sword and a small shield in terms of, from a dueling perspective. Maybe not an invasion perspective again. So I guess the really optimal thing to do would be to spend most of the invasion with straight sword and small shield, or, straight sword and Black Knight shield, or straight sword and Lothric Knight shield. One of those good ones. And then at the end of the invasion, when it comes down to chasing the host, then you would only switch to the Estoc. The nice thing about this setup is that despite the fact that the Estoc really kind of struggles against multiple opponents, is that you have a main hand weapon which can pick up Estoc's slack in a heartbeat. Lothric Knight Sword is probably one of the best weapons for fighting multiple opponents in the entire game. A long time ago, I had a discussion with Mocha Latte about whether a one-handed straight sword and parry shield was better against multiple opponents or a two-handed greatsword. I've reached some interesting new conclusions about that. Basically, they're both good. We'll just leave it at that for now, but not good enough to fight 3 people in a small room, so we're going to head down this elevator and set up an ambush. They've got to come this way, either going to mid-ear or half-light, or maybe they'll play the level. I can't be bothered either way. So we are ready in this elevator shaft to persevere, and then Dark Lothric Knight Sword, Straight Sword R1 spam, which is, as we all know, borderline, actually not even borderline, it's just lethal. Disgustingly powerful straight sword R1 spam in a confined space. Even the power of Chaos Bed Vegetables cannot stop it. Even the power of Theron Fidget Spinner L1s cannot stop it. Straight sword Dark R1 spam. My god, dude, so strong.
Listen, man.
But I don't know, maybe you're like an honorable Japanese samurai or something who would never bring shame upon his family name by pressing R1 4 times in a row with a Dark Lothric Knight Sword. I don't know why I went British there. But I am entirely shameless when it comes to pressing R1 with straight sword. If it's going to hit you, I'm going to do it, and I will not feel bad about it, because it hit you. Anyway, R1 spam is... It's kind of funny because, total noobs do it, but it's also sometimes a mix-up. It's very strange. Check out this guy. He's using Chase the Bro certified tech of moveset swapping a katana onto a Old Wolf curved sword. Let's moveset swap back at him. Oh, there we go. Get ultra rated with a straight sword, baby. Oh my god, that was overpowered and uncounterable. On the real though, it's not that overpowered or uncounterable. They're literally limited to doing staggered R1s. As long as they don't catch you by surprise and you don't panic, you're set. They have become insanely predictable, if we're honest. So anyway, that's my thought on the moveset swap glitch. It's really not that broken or overpowered. Really not that hard to deal with, if we're honest. Anyway, speaking of being shameless, this is Dog with a public service announcement telling you do not feel bad about pulling out a Lothric Knight shield with a straight sword against someone who is shameless enough to spam poise-casted miracles in a gank. That shit is annoying as hell, and frankly, if they're going to use a build that is as gimmicky as that, they deserve to get shut down by a shield that will entirely counter that gimmick, and it will honestly be hilarious as they squirm like putty in your hands. But anyway, yeah, fuck Lightning Storm. Anyway, let's see. That's the Dark Lothric Knight Sword. Underrated and powerful. Dog it, JM certified. See, I'm telling you, man, I try to punish this clown with his oversized meme swords for playing poorly. I try to punish him, And lightning arrow says no until it doesn't anymore because, you know, he's getting actually attacked by another invader. Oh, also, two-handed Lothric Night Sword R2 combos into itself and into an R1. Use that. It's really good, especially on Wake Up. Anyway, peace.